Shalom, shalom. I would like to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone. Peace, blessing, and safety. Allah Akim out there pushing His truth throughout the four corners of the earth to the hopeful elect out there. This is the brother. This is the brother Abadia coming back at you with another one. There's a lot going on right now in the world. There's a lot of protests. You know, everyone's on edge. You know, the whole, the whole Palestine thing. That's a off and on. That's an ongoing. You know, thing that's it gets a lot of attention, and then it goes away, then it comes back. You have over there happening in the States with Charlie Kirk. There's unrest with that. People ain't happy. I just kind of went on Google, just kind of, put in, protests around the world, and a lot is happening. Um, a lot is going on right now. Even over here in Toronto, Canada, on Saturday where we hold camp, there's a big ass protest around there about like immigration and and being pro-Canadian. I don't even know the details about it, but brothers have put some of the videos in the chat, and people are wilding, and it's a good thing, that we didn't. It's a good thing that we held camp inside, because there was crazy, and anything could have happened to any of the brothers. So it was a smart play, but all these things that are happening are just signs of the end, and of what's to come. So I want to start with Luke 21:7. And they asked him, saying, Master, when shall these things begin, and what signs will be when? And let me start from the top again, verse 7. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? And he said, Take heed that ye not be deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Mashiach, and shall draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. But when you shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. So we're seeing this right now. There's just a lot of tension. There's a lot of tension between Jake, Esau, and these other nations. Elam. There's a lot of tension being built up. Between the different nations, and and different people. People are fed up. It's hard out here. Ain't no work. Ain't no work out there. It's slow. Like you can't. It's so hard to find a job. Um, just all the confusion and distractions and false flags. Like there's just so much going on right now. Verse 10. Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation. Then he said to them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And that's being played out right now. You know, you know, people within one nation are are going up against each other. And people don't care. People are not gonna. People are starting to really crash out. You know, it's like the pot is really boiling up, and we can clearly see that, you know, prophecy, that, you know, that we're living in prophecy. You know, it's a you know, it's a shitty, it's a hard time. You know, it's a wicked time. You know, but at the same time, it's a beautiful time. You know, to be witnessing all this come to pass. You know, to see the scriptures literally play out right before our eyes. Uh, this is Second Ezra chapter 9, starting at verse 1. He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest the part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that this is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when you shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, you know, there's always the earthquakes happening every day, and the uproars are turning up. You know, it's getting to more of a more frequent thing. You know, especially over there, what happened with this Charlie guy. You know, whether it was set up, stage, fake. You know, that's besides the point. The point is that it's having an effect on people, and it's making people, you know, kind of, you know, lash out. You know, it's making these Edomites say, you know, how they truly feel. You know, whether that's about, you know, Jake or even within themselves. You know, Esau against Esau. You know, the lower tier ones. Verse 4, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things even from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For this, for this, for like all, for like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. You know, and it's good. It's good that, you know, Esau's rulership is coming to an end. You know, he's he's corrupted everything. He's fucked up everything. He's made everything more difficult than what it has to be. And that's why he has to go. He has to go. Can't live like this no more. You know? That's why that's why when you think about martial law, like you could see it, you could picture it just based off of what's going on and how people are, you know, reacting. You know? It's gonna make people, you know, do, you know, unthinkable things. You know, they're gonna be spirits that are created for vengeance, to do the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, you know? Proverbs 29 and 2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And, you know, that's what's going on right now. Because the wicked is in rulership, you know, people are mourning. People are hurting, you know? People are confused. It ain't easy. Everyone complaining about how shit ain't easy right now. And how everything's so messed up. Everybody. You know, that's all you hear about, people talk about. It ain't easy, you know? These people, especially over in America, you know, they wanted Trump back in office, you know, thinking he's gonna make things better, and he's only made things worse. You know, he came with his ICE movement, you know, having National Guard troops in these different many states, you know, and that's Esau, man. And these things, you know, all these little things that are happening is to get the people, you know, stirred up, you know. Because once the people get stirred up, once the protests get out of hand, and people start taking each other's lives, and having no care in the world for authority, then that's when Esau's gonna come in with the hammer, you know, coming with his laws, coming with that martial law, and gain control. You know, that's why we're gonna see more of these little events, these little things that are gonna take place. Before before it was like, you know, before it was like the whole Black Lives Matter movement, where Jake was just getting slumped out here. But the way you're seeing it now is you're seeing all these you know these so-called white people getting deleted. And Esau's getting Esau's mad. Like, Esau saying, "Well, what about us?" So it's stirring them up, stirring them up. And now that might cause Esau to start killing Jake again. You know, on a much higher scale. You know, this is Second Ezra, chapter 15. I'm going to read a little bit of this. The whole thing is fire. Verse 1, Behold, speak thou in the ears of the people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord, and cause them to be written in a paper, for they are faithful and true. And that's what we're trying to do. We're speaking about prophecy. We're telling, Israel, of what is to come. I'll jump down to verse 5. Behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness has exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Drop down to verse 15. For the sword and destruction, for the sword and the destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Seen a lot of that, especially over in the other parts of the world. People really get down, and they they go all out. They go all out for their rights, or how they feel. And then Jake likes to join. Jake wants to be a part of that, instead of being part of this truth, this real truth. Verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings or princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. So these things are all happening right now. They're all happening right now. Things are hot, and we pray it gets hotter. We pray more things start kicking off. Because Lord knows we want to get out of here. These people always talk about like black fatigue and all this shit, man. We got this world is a fatigue. This world and the way it's being run is a fatigue. It's vexing, but it's all part of the plan. It's all part of the will of Yahweh Shem Yashai. We just had to soldier it out, and endure until the end, and be circumspect, because there's people bugging out there. Now now's not the time to be always out and about, because people might just do shit. That's why I also pay for that protection when we're out there. So that's going to do it for this video. I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakwadash, and double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, and peace, blessing, and safety to all the sincere believers out there. I pray this lesson was edifying. Until the next one, Shalom.